Okay, so while we're waiting for the slide situation to be worked out, I'll get started with the background a little bit. And my oh, okay, here they are. Excellent, thanks. All right, so most of you know this. I think a lot of you were probably in this session last year as well. This is the second year that MDN is running a big web developer survey called the Developer Needs Assessment. Ran for the first time last year. That year we had 28,000 complete responses. And the findings, at least in terms of the needs ranking, which we'll get to in a bit this year as well, was a lot to do with browser compatibility testing, and the slightly the item that's mystified us is number 2, their outdated or inaccurate documentation for frameworks and libraries. So off the back of those results, we designed a follow-up survey. We called it the Browser Compatibility Survey. And so that was also run on MDN, and then we did interviews with 13 participants to try to figure out what might be the most promising thing to go and fix in terms of browser compatibility. And largely speaking, it was layout and styling issues, CSS, Flexbox and Grid came up a lot. And then we have a long list of other things. You can go ahead and look at the report for that if you want to learn more. And the URL for both of those reports is Insights. I will paste it here. It's insights.developer.mozilla.org. Right. So this year, 2020, we have done the developer needs assessment again with some modifications. Maya, next slide, please. Oops, I forgot to finish the slides. It's been fielding since a Monday last week or 2 weeks ago. I didn't remember, so I couldn't finish. It's been fielding for a while now. It's going to be up for another week or so, I think. We have over 5,000 complete responses, but compared to last year, that's a lot fewer, and also the completion rate is lower. But we have still quite a bit of results. So I will go through not all of the results. If anyone is looking at the slide deck, then there are a lot of hidden slides where I've included most of the questions, not all of them, but most of them. And anyone, well, okay. So let's just go through them one by one, the ones that I thought especially worth calling out. So this is just to say, like, who's taking the survey, or rather, what is the target audience of this survey? It's web developers who do some amount of coding on the web. So this is sort of the gating question for the survey. It doesn't target people who have abandoned the web. It doesn't target people who only design but write no code, but people who do some amount of coding. Next, please. We have included this year a new question about, well, what kinds of environments, because obviously web technologies are used outside of the browser as well. But mostly, perhaps not surprisingly, it's mostly still web applications and web pages. Next, please. This is again really to show who's taking this survey, and I think worth noting is like what a big proportion of very experienced developers take the survey. I have to assume this is not representative of web developers at large, that the people who end up taking and completing the survey are not your typical web developer. But exactly what the difference between the populations are, I don't dare guess, but I have a hard time believing that 30% of all web developers have been doing it for more than 10 years. Next, please. Yeah, in terms of representation, this is not a new question for this year. I don't know, I haven't gone and compared this to last year, so I can't say if it's different. But the next question is new though. Next, please. Where we ask about whether or not you identify as being in a minority group. I don't know what we were expecting, other than it being probably less than 50%, which it is. And we do have subsets of the results by the people who responded yes to this question, where one can go and look for like things to look into to form a hypothesis about what's going on and dig deeper, which I have not done yet. Next, please. So people from all over the world took this survey. I think it's notable that the second largest, Germany and Russia are now tied for the second largest, but when I looked at it last time, it was Russia number 2, which is, I don't recall if it was the case last year, but in any case, the point being here that it's quite a broad representation, and the survey was translated into, I forget how many languages this year. If someone remembers, please speak up. Was it 7 or something like that? Yep, and next, please. So this is partly new compared to last year. This is sort of where we're taking the temperature of how different parts of the web platform are doing, or like different parts of web developers' experience are doing. And it's a little tricky to interpret the results. So I sort of put them in a spreadsheet and did some things. This is based on the 5,000 or so complete responses. And what we can see is, so last year we asked only about overall satisfaction, and that number is not changed like within a confidence interval of whatever it was I tried. It's basically the same, because we have fewer responses. We're less sure of the number, so we can't really see a change. Unsurprisingly, people are not happy about browser compatibility. The second row here, that's exactly in line with what we saw last year, of course. But I think the interesting things noted are the last 4 rows, where both people, to a large degree, say neither. They are neither satisfied nor dissatisfied with tooling in various areas. And I have to think that some of these are people who perhaps don't know of any tooling or don't particularly care about the thing, because there is no does not apply option. You had to pick either on this 5-point scale how satisfied you are. But this, even given that, I think the levels of dissatisfaction here are, for the last 4 rows, are still notable. And something is going on with privacy and security. That's interesting. Maybe that will be a discussion topic. And perhaps, if I could speculate, it has to do with all the changes happening with like privacy in browsers, where basically web developers have to adapt to changes coming down the line, and they aren't the same behaviors across browsers either. Yep. All right, next, please. So the meat of the survey, both last year and this year, was this ranking exercise. If you took the survey, you know what this was. You got, I think, 6 options at a time, and you were asked, please pick the most frustrating and the least frustrating. And you get, I don't know, 18 or so sets of these. And based on that, in aggregate, there's an algorithm that sort of tries to rank these, and we get a ranking of sorts. The top 5 are quite similar to last year. I think notably the frameworks and libraries documentation bit is no longer number 2, but I don't really know if this is like how significant of a change it is. It's sort of hard to reason about the change in rank if there's been an actual change, or we can't really be sure it's not the change in population that's done it. But I think these are probably the same 5. Certainly 4 of these are the same as last year. I'm not sure about number 3 there. Next, please. So what's at the very bottom of the list is also interesting, I think, because documentation for the platform itself, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, people seem to be pretty satisfied with that. And that also showed up in the previous slide about my spreadsheet with colors there. But people are actually pretty happy with the documentation of the web. And I guess this maybe means people like MDN. So they're coming to this survey mostly from MDN. And they maybe interpret this question as being about MDN. And so they say, yes, I like MDN, perhaps. But also, of course, it's a testament to the fact that the documentation for these areas, like the base of the web platform, is really quite good. But this is lower than it was last year. And I don't know what explains that. Okay, next, please. This was new for this year. We asked people like in what way they participate in like building the web platform. I think nobody's surprised that none of the above sort of won out, and that very few have, for example, contributed directly to web platform tests. The numbers, the absolute numbers don't show up here, but I think, I don't know, less than 100 certainly for that WPT contribution. So I don't know what to make of the results other than saying that's interesting. Next, please. This is not a new question since last time, but the second question following this is new since last year. So last year we asked people, hey, what are the browsers you support? And then we asked them to rank the browsers they support, I think, in terms of frustratingness, say, which made the results sort of tricky to interpret, although not impossible, but sort of hard to read. So this year we asked it in a different way. Next, please. Right, so we asked people whether you support it or not, like which browser cause you the most issues. And fascinating to me is that while only 27 or so % said they support IE, more than 60-something% say that IE causes issues. I guess that means it's like not officially supported, but they would, I don't know, maybe try to fix things. I don't know exactly how to interpret it, but that difference is pretty stark and interesting. Next, please. All of the following are questions that only a subset of the participants got based on their answers to other questions, which I've omitted here. So if you could go look at the slides, you can see more of this. But what I thought was interesting about this in particular, like a large majority of people say they do use CSS, unsurprisingly, but that if you had to pick the biggest pain points, then it's challenges creating the layout specified, which sort of wins that question. And that's different from, for example, JavaScript. Like people aren't going to say that they couldn't solve the problem with JavaScript. It's going to be about lack of support for new JavaScript features or performance, but not failure to get the job done. So I don't know what's going on there, but it's very interesting. And the answers for HTML sort of point in a similar direction. There it's about the customizability. So I guess it's form control styling, basically. So that's something that possibly do a follow-up on. Next, please. All right, again, new for this year was 2 sections on web testing and then accessibility. So this was web testing. The main unanswered question from last year, at least for me, was when people said that testing across browsers was a frustration, how much of that just means that it's work like manually opening different browsers and testing them, versus how hard is it to set up a CI infrastructure to test browsers? Because you could imagine it mostly being, well, either of those. So these questions added this year, I think, shed some light on that, and that in fact it's not. Well, it's so 24% say that it's the time spent on manual testing. So that's significant, but it's not all that, for sure. The difficulty of writing tests and running the tests and just setting up the environment is also takes large slices of this pie. So a bit of both, I guess, is the conclusion. Next, please. So for accessibility, also new for this year, it looks like just knowing how to do it is a big part of the problem. And then you might also notice the big pink slice there, lack of support from my employer. So last year, that's in the needs ranking, accessibility ranked fairly low, but still it was pretty clear that the right conclusion isn't that it's not a problem and people can easily write accessible sites. It's more like a does not apply sort of situation where not all developers have the mandate to try to do it and or know how to do it. So that makes it perhaps not frustrating. So again, this was added this year to add some color to that. And I haven't dug deep into this myself. Next, please. Still on accessibility. Yeah, mostly people, I guess, just don't test, more than half. I guess testing with screen readers, which is the actual like interface that people are going to use, is pretty low. And again, remember that this is, I'm pretty sure, a subset of the respondents. The 100% here would not mean all 5,000 people who took the survey. There was some gating question for this, I think. Okay, next, please. I wonder why I included this slide. This is the same as last year. I guess the point is that like the amount of influence that developers have over the tools they choose is sort of matters. If people say that they don't have a choice at all, then like improving, like you would have to prioritize differently depending on the answer to this question, simply. But I think it's interesting that only a small minority rarely or never get to make their own choices. So that would suggest that web developers at large still have, at least the people who took the survey, have a lot of agency in how they do their work. All right, I hope that wasn't too boring. Next, please, because we have reached the discussion part of this, and I threw together some suggestions. How about we field for topics for a minute or two, and then we'll pick a few and just spend, I don't know, 10 minutes on each. I guess we could get through 3 topics or so.